Have you ever been left stumped after being asked a tough question during an interview? Happens to pretty much all of us. I'm Lila Huelster here with AgHires to walk through some common yet difficult questions during an interview and how to answer them. Employers don't ask these questions with the goal of purposely tripping you up or making you feel anxious during the interview, but instead to really get an idea if you're going to be a fit for their operation and the role. One of the most common questions candidates get hung up on is, what is your greatest weakness? A lot of candidates think that they need to spin their answer to somehow end up with a desirable trait or quality as their weakness, but that's not necessarily the case. Now, the employer is asking this question to test your honesty and your self-awareness, but maybe not be too honest. So don't say that you struggle to wake up to your alarm in the morning and sometimes show up late to work. Instead, find a real weakness, but balance that answer with professionalism and include how you're working to improve on that weakness. A good example might be, I tend to bite off a little bit more than I can chew and take on extra tasks, so sometimes I'm finding myself missing deadlines. But I'm working on better managing my workload and only taking on the things I know I can get done on time. Another common question is, why should we choose you for this role? This is kind of a loaded question, so you don't want to ramble, but instead kind of tie up this nice summary of your relevant background experience, other roles you've been in, your education, if you've grown up in agriculture on a farm. Really, this is your time to explain what sets you apart from other candidates. How have you handled conflict or a disagreement in the workplace? Employers here really just want to see if you're going to be difficult to work with or if you're going to resolve conflict in an appropriate way at work. This question can be a little bit tricky if you don't have an answer already prepared going into that interview. So ahead of time, think of an example, one that results, in a positive outcome and the conflict was resolved. And when you're giving this answer, you want to make sure you stay professional, put that ego aside, don't be pointing fingers as you're explaining that situation. Again, the employer is really just trying to see what it's like to work with you and if you're going to cause any issues at work. To end on a positive note, you can also touch on what you learned from that experience. What was the reason for leaving your last position? A lot of candidates can feel a little bit uncomfortable answering this question, especially if they weren't in their last role very long or they've had a lot of similar transitions. But the hiring manager is really just trying to connect the dots here and make sure there are no red flags in your transitions. Being honest is your best bet here, but you also want to avoid speaking negatively about your past employers. Definitely avoid answers like, I didn't like my boss, so I decided to quit, or they didn't pay me enough there. While leaving a company to seek a higher paying role is a very common and valid reason to transition, the way you explain this is more important than the actual matter. So instead of bashing or talking negatively, what you want to do is answer something like this. In order to combat the rising cost of living in my area, I decided to leave my territory sales position and move into a sales manager role where I could earn a higher base salary. Another common question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? This question's really for the hiring manager to understand your future goals and how you're going to fit into the organization long term. Now, if your answer implies that you're not likely to stay with the company long term because you want to move out of the state in a couple years or you want to start your own business, that might hinder your chances of being hired. So you want to answer this question in a way that paints a picture for the employer of your future goals and plans, but also still ties in to being with that company long term. When you're faced with a difficult interview question, the last thing you want to do is say, I don't know, or not provide an answer. Take a deep breath, think about your answer, and don't overthink it. If you stay brief, honest, and professional, you'll be just fine. Like and follow AgHires for more interview tips.